Okay, it's 7:02. I'll call the meeting of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission to order. And Leslie's not here, so I'll call the roll. Bill Brown, here. Annie Adams. Leonardo Covas.
Here.
Kara Dudek.
Here.
Cynthia Hoyle. Audrey Ishii. Susan Jones. Jeff Marino.
Here.
Craig Schunkweiler.
Here.
Nancy Westcott.
Here.
Lily Wilcock.
Here.
We do have a quorum. Okay, thank you. So everybody has an agenda. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, could we have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Nancy,
I second that motion.
seconded by Lily. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Approval of the minutes from the previous meetings. Everybody get a chance to look at the minutes that were emailed. I didn't get any corrections, but I assume if there were corrections, they were made in the official copy. Anybody have any additional corrections that you didn't send in? Okay. Could we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Jeff and seconded by Leo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks. And Annie and Cynthia came. So we have everybody except Audrey and Susan. Sue. No, I'm pretty sure Audrey's out of the country. Yeah, she's out of the country. Okay, public input. Does anybody from the public want to address the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission? Nope. Okay, unfinished business. We have 3 presentations from regional planning commissions. Is this the order you want to do them in? It's on the agenda?
Yeah, that's
Okay. So first is Kickapoo Rail Trail Weaver Park Connectivity Study. And this is Gabe Lewis.
Good evening. All right. Try to move this. All right. Thank you for having me tonight. Gabe Lewis. I'm here with Rita Black and Lori Morgan, also from Regional Planning Commission. You'll have to get used to seeing my face tonight because I have a lot of agenda items. So we'll start with the Weaver Park and East Urbana Kickapoo Rail Trail Connectivity Study. The draft report is complete. We have presented to the Urbana Park District Board of Commissioners and the Champaign County Forest Preserve District Board. They actually had a joint meeting, so their foundation and Citizen Advisory Commission was also present. It was a joint meeting. The draft report is available on our website. There are 7 chapters. I know that I've talked a little bit about some of the work we've done on this, but just to review, we have the project overview, existing conditions, network analysis, public involvement, facility types, alternatives analysis, and the conclusion. There are several goals and benefits for doing this study, which I'm sure you are familiar with or can appreciate. The 3 major goals are to connect the KRT to Weaver Park. That's on this little map. Don't know where the zoom in tool is, but let's see. Well, full screen we can definitely do. Okay. If there's anything you can't see well, just let me know and I can try to zoom in here. So there was a steering committee for the plan that we identified 3 goals of connecting the KRT to Weaver Park, developing a primary trailhead at Weaver Park, and improving East Urbana bicycle and pedestrian access. We also identified 10 benefits, which I won't go over everything, but there's quality of life. We're near the Prairie School campus on the south end of Weaver Park, economic benefits, health and wellness. So the target audience of this study are interested but concerned cyclists and pedestrians. There are sharrows on East Main Street, but there are no sidewalks, so we do want to accommodate both users to connect the side path on the west side through Weaver Park to the shared use path that is the Kickapoo Rail Trail. We used bicycle level service, BLOS, that was used in the bike master plans, and we also looked at level of traffic stress for bicyclists and pedestrians for this study, and that's what this map shows. For pedestrians, the blue is 4, high stress. The scale is 1 to 4. 1 is the least stressful for a particular segment, and 4 is the most stressful. So essentially, if there's no sidewalk, such as what's on the East Main Street portion, that becomes blue. It takes the worst case condition of a segment. So where a segment may be better, an intersection may be not as bad.
So Gabe, why are the interstate and some of the other roads blue?
Well, you don't want to walk on the interstate. The
Well-
interstate segment doesn't really need to be.
So blue
can be
is the
disregarded.
most stressful,
Mm-hmm.
and which is the least stressful?
There's like the lighter colors, yellowish orange. Most of the segments on here are 2 or 3.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we could actually just throw the interstate out because there's denial of access.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot bike on the interstate.
All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. For public involvement, we did hold 2 public workshops, but we also looked at the connectivity requested between the 2 locations in previous studies that we have done, the Champaign County Greenways and Trails Plan, the Long Range Transportation Plan, the Urbana Park District Trails Master Plan, and the Bike Master Plan, since it was highly requested in all those plans. So this thick purple, both of these thick purple lines from the Bike and Park District Trails plans show that it's a highly requested area for a facility. And then, as I mentioned, we had the 2 workshops. The first in September, which I did talk about before, we had 35 attendees and asked how they would connect the KRT to Weaver Park. We took this information to help develop the alternatives, and we also asked what amenities people would want for the Park District and the Forest Preserve District. So then from that, we developed 9 alternatives. They're all shown as lines on this map, with the exception of where they go through private property, so we have some boxes as general areas. The first 1 and 2 are on the Main Street corridor. Alternative 1 is proposing to add bike lanes, which would require widening the road because it wouldn't fit with the current width. Number 2 is a side path on the south side of Main Street from the KRT to Weaver Park. Number 3 is using the rail line to Smith Road and then accessing the park that way. Number 4 uses the rail line and cuts south just short of Smith Road on the city-owned right-of-way called Baker's Lane. And the city-owned right-of-way is between Main and Washington that comes out at Smith Road near the early childhood school. The area between the rail line and the Main Street is still privately owned. Alternative 5 is the Pfeffer Road corridor here, where the sanitary district has some property and an easement would be required, and then it would use Main Street going west to get to Weaver Park. Alternative 6 is the East Urbana Industrial Park next to the post office, just connecting to Industrial Circle. Number 7 is the Pfeffer Road corridor down to Washington Street to the school campus. And then alternative 8 is using High Cross Road, Side Path, and Tapman Court to get to either going back north to Main Street or south to Washington Street using one of the other alternatives. And then alternative 9 uses the rail corridor all the way down to the Art Bartel Road, which is almost to Learman. Art Bartel comes down to the nursing home and the County East campus. So those boxes are what we call zones of potential connectivity. And then for each alternative in the document, we have the name, the text, a map, a location where it is. For 4 of the alternatives, we looked at the side path suitability score to see if it was appropriate. All of them did pass as most or somewhat suitable, except for the north side of Washington Street would be least suitable with the number of driveways that are there. And then we used the new crosswalk guidelines to look at Baker's Lane number 4 to get across Main Street because it's between Smith Road and Dodson Drive, and there is proper distance to be able to install a crosswalk there to have kind of enhanced warning for the drivers for any pedestrians and bicyclists. Then for each alternative, we listed the opportunities and constraints, again, working with the steering committee, and then photos of not only existing conditions, but then renderings that were from the bike master plan. So on the bottom, this is Baker's Lane looking north from Washington Street, and on the left side is the early childhood school entrance, and then on the right shows what it could look like if a shared use path was installed. 4. Mm-hmm. All right. So then we looked at all of the alternatives a couple ways. We compared the number of opportunities and the constraints, and those are listed here. That alternative 4, Baker's Lane, had 9 more opportunities identified than constraints. Smith Road was next on the list with 4 more opportunities than constraints. And then the 2 Main Street options had 2 more opportunities. At the bottom were 6 and 8, 8 and 6 over by the post office, that area. They had a lot more constraints, especially with private property and not getting your connection not only to Weaver Park, but really to any trailhead parking facility. And then those 3 goals I mentioned at the beginning, we looked to see if each alternative met those goals or not. And the 4 alternatives that met all 3 goals were 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the Main Street side path, Smith Road, Baker's Lane, and Pfeffer Road to Main Street. And again, that 6 and 8 didn't meet any of the 3 goals that we were looking at. So with this information, we had an open house in May, and we had 20 people stop by before the Bike Month celebration at Weaver Park, and asked people out of these alternatives what would be their preference, their top choice. We actually got some, people with multiple choices, which was fair, so we scored all that and weighted that, and number 4 came out on top. So 2, 3, and 4, if they were asked just their top choice, were actually even, but because of all the votes, then number 4 was the top choice, which is the Baker's Lane. You can see that in red. And then 3 is Smith Road, 2 is the Main Street side path. So finally, we identified next steps in the document for some or all agencies. The Park District just opened this summer the vehicle parking lot at Weaver Park for cyclists to park and ride to the trail, and then they will continue developing trailhead amenities at Weaver Park. The city, Forest Preserve, and RPC, since 2 of the 3 of us are working on the bike wayfinding signage plan, That's something that signage could go in on Main Street when that's complete. And then this connectivity partnership is all four agencies continuing to work together to implement this, work with the railroad and private property owners, since implementation of any of these alternatives is contingent upon more analysis and working with those parties. And then the final comment, which is good news, is if you're not aware already, we, the collective We in Urbana, we RPC worked with these agencies to apply for state planning funding, and we were awarded that to so what we're calling the KRT extension planning study, to look at the corridor all the way west to Lincoln Avenue. So that's a 2-year planning study. Carl is providing local match to look at the planning on this corridor to get it west into downtown Urbana and to connect downtown to Carl. So going back to the other 2 agency boards that I've presented to, they have had their presentations, and City of Urbana is the last for me to present to, and it's an understanding that they are accepting this document, I suppose. They're not taking any formal action. The city can decide what it wants to do, but with the planning study, or with this alternative analysis done and the presentations, they are happy and pleased with what has been presented. So, can take any questions.
Any questions for Gabe? Cynthia?
So I have a few questions. One is, I think one element that was not a part of the study, or this study, that we might include in the KRT extension study is economic impacts. The Baker's Lane choice offers a nice connection, but it doesn't connect people to downtown easily, because it would connect them to Washington, and they would go to Washington, and they're not in downtown when they get there. So Good for Haraches. And so I think that's an impact that we would like to build on with this. The other thing question that I have is, it seems to me that many of those connections are desirable in the future. And so one thing that I guess I would have liked for us to do was to prioritize them and say that all of these connections have benefits that in the future, as we're working on this, if the opportunity arises for us to make that connection, it would accomplish X, Y, and Z. Except for the 2, of course, that didn't do anything.
Yeah, the 6 and 8
Yeah.
in the by the
others,
post
I
office.
thought all of them have, except I have to say I was not a fan of the bike lanes on Main Street. I think the side path is better, and the cost, if I remember when I talked to you, the cost differential between doing the side path and widening the road. I mean, widening the road is much more expensive, unless you have to acquire property, and I think there was some property acquisition necessary for the side path, and so it kind of balanced that out.
I think either way, yeah, several of these alternatives would have to look at property acquisition.
Okay.
We identified if it would, it usually said easement and or acquisition, well, it would be easement or acquisition, but
It's been a while since you and I chatted about that, but it didn't provide for pedestrians either, so that was
Right.
the other thing. It just didn't accomplish what we were setting out to do here. But it does give us direct access into town, and so that makes it a desirable option from a number of perspectives, unless, of course, we can connect through the rail line, which is even better. And that, of course, would be my number 1 choice, but the study that we've got funded will give us more information on that.
yeah.
Annie?
I went to the presentation that was before the bike
park meeting thing, and I talked to you, and I was really, it was interesting. I was really upset, and like my bike ride over there was it was the first time I was just really upset. I was like, cars were trying to like run me off the road, and it was a really simple ride. It's up Washington, take a left down Learman, take a right onto Main Street, and I arrived really frustrated, but I would just like to change my vote because
Too late.
because I decided to try a different route, and it's a very simple route, and the route is I'm biking on the side path on South Learman now. I'm not biking on the street anymore. It's just like, I'm done with it. And it's wide enough, I think, legally. I don't know if someone wants to give me a ticket, give me a ticket.
No, it's a
That's
Oh,
a-
is it
Yeah.
multi-use?
It's
Okay.
multi-use.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been biking down Learman, taking a right down Main Street, and biking on the sidewalk as far as I can go, and it's really actually quite enjoyable. And then when I'm biking home, and what's freaked me out the most is the times I have done this. When I'm biking home, I'm biking on Main Street on the other side, and both times I have done it, I have seen parents pushing kids in strollers with their phones, like using them as flashlights, and they're like pushing their kids in strollers on Main Street. And that was the point at which I said, as much as I want to go right to downtown Urbana on that railroad track, and really have a massive economic impact on downtown Urbana. I also noticed too, a lot of people actually walk to Walmart along the main street, and then now on the Kickapoo walk through. And it's actually an interesting I notice people are exercising that way. They're going, and they actually like to walk to Walmart because it's well lit, and then they walk around. I spent a lot of time in Walmart buying a bike rack one evening. But I noticed people were like walking around. I mean, I noticed that it was like, I was like, oh, wow. And I just had no idea about the quote unquote nightlife on Main Street. And it's seriously parents pushing strollers or getting off buses and pushing kids. I don't know. I was just stunned. So that was just sort of my two like comments on, and I am with Cynthia on, when you presented all these options, I was with Cynthia too. I was like, I think we need to make a plan to build a good percentage of these, if not today, but just kind of slowly try to figure out how we can keep doing that, because these are all great. So,
Good.
so thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. Yeah, on the one connecting Pfeffer Road, seems like that would be a good extra one to have, whatever we do to get to Weaver Park. It seems like that would be affordable enough and make an extra connection to a residential area to get more people from the residential area on the trail at that point without having to go up to Main Street. I didn't see any discussion of costs in this presentation. Is there like a final report that you're providing that will have more discussion on costs and acquisitions and stuff?
There is a document, but it will not discuss costs. That was something the steering committee decided.
Okay. And then can you just point to where the railroad tracks currently end and where are they being used to the end
Right.
for
That
backing up and stuff?
So the railroad tracks from the west end at Smith Road, because there's no crossing, they took that out. There are still some tracks east of Smith, but that's very, very abandoned. And then I failed to mention earlier, the Forest Preserve property, if you're not aware, ends about at Scottswood Drive, if it was extended, so about here. And there's the Trailside Mobile Home Park. So to the east is KRT, or Forest Preserve, undeveloped KRT. To the west is still Norfolk Southern Railroad property. So both really, yeah, alternatives 3 and 4 and 9 would all require access along the railroad.
And do you know, as far as how they use those tracks, and I know most of it's going to DART at that point.
Yeah, my understanding is DART and Emulsicoat twice a week.
Do they actually back up all the way to alternative 3 and 4? Or?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't
No.
think that it goes, Learman's not on here, but I'm not aware of the trains going further east of the DART spur.
Okay. And then on alternative 4, Baker's Lane, can you remind me why, I know it's in the long-term plans to build it all the way down to Washington, but as far as connecting it to Weaver Park, why was that part included? I mean, why not just go from Weaver Park through that square box 4 up to the trail?
Oh, instead of like on the side going through the park?
Yeah.
Well, this is definitely illustrative. So the Park District and City talked within this study about having probably a more meandering path. I would say that one of the benefits we identified with having a shared use path on Baker's Lane is that to the east you have Scottswood without sidewalks, which is also not in the city, but with the Prairie Campus Safe Routes to School plan, that's a way to get kids to have a pedestrian facility to the school too.
Mm-hmm.
So then another thing, and this can be the case with multiple alternatives, is that this project could be phased where, you know, you have one phase that gets you to Weaver Park and another that gets you down to Washington Street.
Okay. Yeah, any other questions from anyone? Oh, Annie and Craig?
This is just more of I did not know this, but recently I just found out that in Madison, they actually have train tracks that are active train tracks, and they put bike lanes next to them, so I didn't know that that was a thing. I actually thought we would have to make sure Solo Cups did not use those train tracks anymore. And then I also did recently, people are sharing this video from a company that is basically putting recumbent bikes on train tracks, and people are riding it, you know, they put them on, you ride it like a train. Instead of a motorized train, it's a bike train.
It's like the old hand carts, except they're pedal driven.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that would be a great tourist attraction for Urbana. And we have actually, the University of Illinois actually has an entire train department. So we could do races. We could have, like, you know, instead of like derby box races, we could have, like, you know, train track races and other things like that. But we can have the students maybe design something. But it seems like it could be a really great tourist attraction, along with Sue Jones' amazing idea of a Lincoln hat that kids play on. So a giant Lincoln hat. Anyway, so those were just my two comments about, I was just really worried that we would have to take those train tracks out, and it's my understanding we can actually work with Solo Cups, which I think is a better option.
Craig?
I can speak a little bit, Bill, to your question about cost, being on the steering committee and having done some of the background work to help RPC out. This plan was a higher level plan, and what we felt was that there really wasn't enough detail per se to get into cost. The next steps, I think the beauty of the plan is it kind of winnows down, you know, to some, like Cynthia indicated, some, you know, choices there. The next step might be to you know, pursue a grant opportunity, and at that point we would then have to do environmental clearances, and then you'd really get into the detail of actually doing a topographic survey and determining land ownership and the cost components. Like at Baker's Lane, you have one component might be some type of crossing there that requires some type of active
Like a button
control.
or something.
Yeah, and those were all things that were really beyond the scope of this project. So with that in mind, you know, we can put costs out, but then once, as we all know, once we have numbers, then we all think that, well, that's the cost, and then what we find out later is, oh wow, you know, it's going to be a lot more. So, you know, and that I will tell you just from my experience, that happens a lot, and we wanted to kind of avoid that thing. So we were looking more. They were looking more at opportunities and constraints and what was preferences, not letting some of those things drive. But I can tell you some of those, particularly the side path on Main Street, we got involved in that, and there's quite a bit of cost there, you know, to make that work. But does that answer your question then?
Yeah, I think so. I know I've looked a lot at the side path on Main Street there, and there's a ditch you'd probably have to either build over or something like that. And,
right, exactly.
So I was just kind of trying to figure out an order of magnitude, how much extra that would be. But.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that the Baker's Lane connection, not the path along the side of the park, but just the connection itself, that's significantly less than, say, the Main Street bike path, for instance. I can tell you that for sure.
But With the Main Street bike path, is it taking away, it's taking away the bike lane and then the little side area that the parents currently walk on with their kids in the pitch blackness?
Well, the bike lane, goes between Dotson and Scottswood, and there's actually some reconstruction of the road that would have to occur there to make both of those kind of work. One, it wouldn't necessarily remove the bike lane, but what we'd have to do is we have to adjust curbing to make things work. So there's like a split that occurs there, and then we have a lot of vertical issues in proximity to homes and trees and
But
things like that.
my simple question is like, by taking away the bike lane, what I mean is you would narrow the street and you would have you'd have a two-way car street or vehicle street, motorized vehicle street, and then you would have a side path, so no bike lane.
We didn't get into the details of eliminating the center turn lane, but there is a fair amount of traffic that makes the turns there, particularly at Dotson, so that becomes then a safety issue overall. That's part of a study that would have to occur at that point. Right now, what we looked at was, could you physically actually get it in? Which there were some concerns, and we talked about, as Bill mentioned, there's drainage issues there. The good news is, yes, it can be done. Right, but I mean, there are trade-offs, clearly.
Well, and we have other roads in the city where we have a bike lane and a side path, so it doesn't require removal of a bike lane, depending on what right of way you have and access to purchasing property, et cetera.
But I was thinking more like if it's a more cost-effective way, and obviously traffic would drive slower if you took away the bike lane and you made the bike lane a side path, you made the bike lane like what we're seeing on MCOR. That's what I'm trying, I know, I feel like I'm not being really clear about this, is that, like, so basically you have a road from, it's like MCOR. You have a road and then you have a little bit of a raised area for people to walk in, like an 8-foot side path. That was more my question.
So that kind of design would not be allowed with current policies that are out there. Because a side path is really considered a multi-use path for pedestrians, and those, we don't want them walking adjacent to the street. Whereas on MCOR, that's a dedicated bike lane. So there's actually space, horizontal space considerations that we have to meet. If we don't, we have to put in barriers, basically some type of physical guardrail to separate out. So yeah, that's where we get into these logistical issues that aren't really easy to overcome. The other thing is the bike path actually, or the bike lanes, they cease. They only really encompass just a small portion of it. There's a large portion.
You're right. I
Right.
forgot it's a share. Once you get, I totally spaced that. All right.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. And just for clarification on Annie's earlier comment about riding on the sidewalk, as far as I know, it's okay to ride on the sidewalk except for downtown Urbana.
That's correct.
Oh,
And
really?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yep.
So feel welcome to ride
Yeah.
on the sidewalk everywhere.
Yeah, you could, and if you do, as a bicyclist, you're encouraged, though, to call out to the pedestrian when you pass
Yeah,
them.
that's actually, I think, a state,
Yeah,
or, you're supposed to either ring your
If they
bell
don't
or
have
call
headphones
out.
on.
yeah.
Okay. Anything
Bill,
else?
before we go on to the next one, should we pick a preferred
Well,
alternative?
Yeah, do we want to recommend a preferred alternative or accept it, or I guess it'll go to council to be accepted?
Yeah, there's no action required by BPAC at this point. It will be going to the committee of the whole in a future meeting here. But there's no, at this point, the plan's not being asked to be approved. This was more of an FYI at this point. Am I correct?
I'm not sure we would be able to agree
Right.
on a single alternative, but we
Right.
might agree that these three alternatives are all good or something like that if you want to.
Well, I think we could make a motion to recommend that, say that we think it's a good plan, and that we would encourage consideration of a number of the connections in the future when the opportunity presents itself. And then we could add into contingent on what the KRT extension study provides us in terms of additional information.
Okay. Do you want to try to restate the motion in a concise
So
language?
I move that we recommend to City Council that they, I don't know if the word is approve or accept the study, and that we would also recommend that more than one alternative be considered for future implementation as opportunity arises.
Okay, sounds good. Any second to that?
I second
Nancy seconds. Any discussion?
I'll abstain since I'm staff and also on the steering committee.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks. Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you.
Next is pedestrian master plan update.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So the pedestrian master plan, we are working on the recommendations. That's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Just to start, we're talking about infrastructure recommendations, which is the built environment. Those are our engineering recommendations. And then the non-infrastructure recommendations are everything else, measures that we can take to improve walking in Urbana. And that's education, encouragement, enforcement, evaluation, policy. So we've looked at and are looking at both local and national sources of information. We have 8 documents here: the Greenways and Trails Plan, the big one being the Sidewalk Network Inventory and Assessment, the Prairie Campus Safe Routes to School Plan for Dr. Williams Elementary, Savoy Bike and Pedestrian Plan, since that's a recent effort in a neighboring community, the Sustainable Choices Long Range Transportation Plan, the Urbana Bicycle Master Plan for shared use facilities, the Park District Trails Master Plan, and the Walk Champaign Pedestrian Plan. Nationally, we have 13 cities and plans that we are looking at: Bellevue and Bellingham, Washington; Chicago, Duck, North Carolina; Fort Collins, Colorado; Indianapolis; Lawrence, Kansas, University of Kansas area; New York City; Santa Fe, New Mexico; Santa Monica, California; Seattle and Spokane, Washington; and Wheeling, Illinois, and the north suburbs. Yes.
Where, pray tell, is Duck, North Carolina? I've never heard of that.
Closer. Yeah, I was going to say, you can give a more precise answer. I believe it's closer to the coast. It's a newer community. Mhm. They have they have a pretty comprehensive pedestrian plan. That's actually what it's called. Yeah.
Duck is a town in Dare County, North Carolina. As of 2010 census the year, the population was 369. But during peak vacation season, the population increases to over 20,000, which is probably why they need a pedestrian plan.
Yeah. Different communities, different areas of the country, but different pedestrian plans with ideas to consider. And we did look at those for the goals and objectives that we've discussed with you. So breaking it down a bit for recommendations, we are looking at for the projects to include on the existing facility side. If you may remember, there are 4 pedestrian features, major pedestrian features, those being sidewalks, and then all these scores refer to the sidewalk inventory and assessment. So essentially, if anything has a score of 90 and under, because we've broken it down that the top tier is 90 to 100. So sidewalks and curb ramps have both a condition score and an ADA compliance score. The top picture is Florida and Orchard looking east. It's dusk, so it's a little hard to see everything, but it kind of both pictures encompass all the features. The ramps here on the northeast side have a better condition score because what's there is in decent shape, but the compliance score is not as good because it doesn't have truncated domes, so there's things that can be done to improve it for people with disabilities. And then crosswalks and pedestrian signals, the areas or the features that are less than 90. We're also going, there's a few policy reviews that we'll be having in here. It's not going to be a full-fledged rewrite of anything, but it's acknowledging, for one thing here, the brick sidewalks, which I know has been something that's been studied a lot in the city before, but in a pedestrian plan, it should be addressed. And then for new facilities, we're definitely looking at the public input that we've received for this plan. One example, which also has been in other plans, the south side of Florida Avenue between Race and Lincoln is recommended to have a side path. What you see here is actually just a landing pad for bus stop. And then we'll include information on the street or location of each project, the parameters, the neighborhood, the recommendation, the agency or agencies responsible, and cost estimates. We have national guidance. We've talked with Public Works and have some examples of some of the study or the projects they've done to try to get some cost estimate information. And then to help with implementation, we're scoring each project to come up with the priorities. From the sidewalk inventory, there's a sidewalk gap analysis, and the blue, that's a lot more on the outskirts of the community, is a lower connectivity value for a missing sidewalk. So these all identify where there's not a sidewalk, what's the value of installing it. Is it higher because it's closer to other sidewalks, because it's closer to a destination like a school or downtown or something of that nature? And then, which those higher values are red, orange is medium high, yellow is medium, and then the blues are lower, which are a lot more on the outskirts. So we're using that to score the projects from the bike master plan. If it's part of a shared use path, that's recommended there. Both the 2017 input and then this, what we want to do to close out this plan process, having a second public meeting, any input on projects there that would get scored for implementation, and then anything in the long-range transportation plan too. So we are mapping all of this right now, and then that'll be information we can present this summer to the public as part of public meeting 2. And then the other side of everything, I'm going to go through the recommendation categories within each E or subheader. So for education, and if there's something that you feel is missing, this would be the time to let me know. Not your only chance, but something that you can let me know. So we have 16 actually here, starting with availability of materials in other languages. Just an example that the safe walking route maps, we have a couple in Spanish for the dual language schools. Incorporating pedestrian safety and driver's ed curriculum. Jane's walks, which are citizen-led neighborhood walks. Law enforcement officer training. Map updates and distribution, not just safe walking route maps, but anything that includes pedestrian facilities. Parent letters, particularly for schools. Some of these relate to the schools. A pedestrian awareness week. Professional development internally. Property owner education about sidewalk maintenance. Public participation. Risk watch in the schools. Road user safety campaigns. Traffic circulation maps for the schools. The Walk as One event in the summer. Walking challenges, and then Walk with the Mayors, which was something public health initiated a few years ago and we haven't really had in a little while. So this was just a banner from that. Going on to encouragement, public health also had something called the CATCH program, which is a coordinated approach to child health at elementary schools or that's where we had them. Frequent walker clubs at elementary schools to get kids to be able to walk, maybe at school if they can't walk to school. National Trails Day that happens at the beginning of June, that's in the trails plans with the park districts to recommendation there. Neighborhood walking maps, open streets, car-free days, park and walk sites at the schools, which we were able to do at Dr. Williams, public-private partnerships, and snow removal. More encouragement recommendations, support for advocacy organizations from the city, themed walks, something that can be around art or history, something, you know, kind of a reason to go out and walk. Walk and Roll to School Day in October. Applying for walk-friendly community designation. We have that for bicycling. I think that Urbana would be a strong candidate for that, for walking. Walk to events, a little similar to themed walks, but walking to dinner, walking to a concert, what have you. Walking school buses at the schools, expanding that beyond Leal, and I know Dr. Williams had it at one point. Walkway and trail dedication events and walks, same thing can happen for bikeway facilities, but if there's something that's built and that is a really good benefit for the neighborhood or the community, that's something that can be celebrated. Wayfinding signage and year-round active transportation program kind of encompasses everything. Enforcement, we have enforcing motorist violations, no cell phones in school zones, which we do have on the signs here. Police presence in school zones at the beginning of the school year. That's a good recommendation from the Safe Routes to School plan to be visible and hopefully get motorist compliance to make pedestrian walking safe. Trail safety and security, speed feedback trailers showing your speed, and stop for pedestrians. And then for evaluation, we're developing performance measures, and so assessing that annually, city staff doing that. From the Safe Routes to School plans, crime data analysis that may affect decisions to walk to school, economic impact of walking and trails. So that's right here from Cynthia's comment earlier. We've got that noted. The pedestrian and bicycle survey, we administered that in 2014. And we want to do that on a regional scale. I don't know if I can talk about that at all. We did, what's that? Okay. Another grant that a state planning grant that we received is to work on some bicycling and pedestrian evaluation in terms of counts and surveys. And we would like to do this on a regional scale now. So not just Urbana, but have Champaign and Savoy. And we do have a grant to work on that as part of the long-range transportation plan. So that is definitely exciting. Pedestrian and trail counts, pedestrian crash studies, pedestrian network analyses, pedestrian plan update for this plan in the future, speed studies, traffic calming policies and programs, and then at the schools, travel tallies and walkability surveys. And then some other non-infrastructure items on the policy side, looking at snow removal ordinance and lighting ordinance, and then pedestrian circulation in non-residential areas, particularly commercial areas, and then a regional pedestrian bicycle coordinator, which has been discussed in other plans. It's definitely, as it says, regional, so not something the city is the sole or responsible agency for. So to bring it all together, the greens, the activities we're done with, and we'll have the public round 2 of input. We're aiming for next month. Want to fit it in at an opportunistic time in August. Probably looking at a public meeting, perhaps if we can be at the market. Not as extensive as the first round, but we would be looking at those 2 types of outreach events. And then, as we're doing now, the recommendation and implementation work to present that for public review. And then in the fall, having a review of the plan presentations. So that's what we have. That's where we're at.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Gabe at this point? Good progress.
Thanks. We're chugging along.
Can,
Yeah, Jeff.
under the policy, maybe this might fall under C, but could you, I don't know if you want to include like a review of zoning ordinances that may be prohibitive of pedestrian activity, and I guess development patterns that are auto-oriented that may preclude pedestrian access, and I don't know if you need to make any recommendations, but just something that if Kevin does a text amendment in the future, he can point back to the pedestrian plan, say the pedestrian plan recommends maximum parking or mixed-use development or whatever that can help reduce auto-oriented development in the future.
Yep. Anyone else? Cynthia?
I have some recommendations.
Okay.
We can include. One is that among REs, I think that we should talk about equity. And I think that's an issue that will run through in terms of some of the others, the encouragement, the law enforcement, et cetera. And then under education, I thought I'd see Vision Zero in there. I did not see it. And another thing I thought we could take a look at as a tool is tactical urbanism, just to, and the pilot study idea to give us the ability to take a look at altering some streets and locations, see how they work, and have a time period in which we do it, and then evaluate whether we think it's a good idea. I think we really need that. And perhaps also some sort of approval process that makes it easier for it to happen with the city. I know, for example, in Champaign, they were able to approve the bike share faster because they had a pilot program that they could apply to this that allowed them to move that through more quickly. Ben told me it had to do with, it was very technical and complicated and fairly limited, but it's something we could take a look at. Under encouragement, I think something we ought to take a look at is encouragement of a Smart Trips program with the university and with local businesses and agencies. I think that is a really important tool that we're missing locally. I would like for us to take a look at programs for safe routes to transit and safe routes for seniors and safe routes to parks. I think those are all things that we could look at. We sort of have tools in place for safe routes to transit in that we've looked at our connectivity and we've done a plan for bus stop amenities, et cetera, but I still think we could perhaps include that. And then under evaluation, one thing that is, I think would be a really good program, and maybe you put it under encouragement, I don't know, but AARP has a program for involving seniors, and they have tools for seniors to go out in groups and do assessments of areas. And I think it'd be great if we could get we've got a pretty active retired community here. Maybe we could get Ollie and Senior Center and some other people to put together some events and invite seniors to come, and they do a little training and they take them out and get feedback from them, because they're going to bring an entirely different perspective to this than Safe Routes to School, for example. They've got different issues than kids with walking. So I'd like to throw those in there for consideration.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, great. Thanks, Gabe.
Thanks.
Number 3.
All right.
I guess we should say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bicycle wayfinding plan update.
Yes. So previously I've talked to you about what we've worked on, obviously in the past, destination identification and hierarchy. With city staff and steering committee, then we have worked on some draft designs, but we, have enjoyed working on this and getting things looking better, in our opinion at least, kind of revising what we have and getting to closer to more realistic and feasible ideas. So I should give you a little background. Within national standards, there are 3 different types of signs for bicycle wayfinding that are decision signs, turn signs, and confirmation signs. So essentially, if you're on a trip, you will get to your decision sign first if you're coming to an intersecting, like 2 bikeways intersecting or a bikeway and a trail or something like that. At the location, at the corner, say, at the intersection, you'd have a turn sign, and then say you made a right turn, then after that you would have a confirmation sign letting you know you are indeed on the bike route, and that you made the right turn, you're not going to get lost. So from there, we have a menu of on-street and off-street signs. And the on-street follows the manual and uniform traffic control devices, the MUTCD. Since they're near roads, there are definitely standards that have to be followed. For the off-street signage, there's a little more flexibility in terms of our kind of local flavor, what we can add to that. But we did want to keep some consistency so that the system is recognizable. So here on the left, we have 3 different types of decision signs for the on-street. The first uses the bike route sign, but identifies or names the bicycle route. And when I mean bike route or bike way, it not only can be just a shared street, but also a street with bike lanes or shared bike parking lanes, so that you have the signage on all the facilities. The GT in the top right corner is the stamp logo for the greenways and trails. So beyond that being a plan, part of that is that we want there's a plan for there to be a recognizable logo and system. We have a logo signage portion of the document and design guidelines, and that would be, this is what's incorporating that, is that you're part of the Champaign County system.
And why is it not on the right-hand side ones, the GT?
Oh, over here? Because this uses the full logo on the bottom. This is the Greenways and Trails of Champaign County logo.
Okay.
So the first sign has that named bikeway. The second just uses the traditional bike route sign that we do have in town, and the third also does. But then this third sign puts in that GT on the supplementary plaques, the supplementary signage. So then all 3 of these also have examples of a destination, the distance and mileage, and then the time that it would take at just an average bicycling rate or not too fast of a bicycling rate. And then on the right, we have similar information, but addressing your comment, we have the full Greenways and Trails logo. What's that?
It's not readable. And I had to no, I mean, really, if you're doing a sign, you do want it to be monocolor, like the city of Urbana, like the green trail logo on the upper right, like the bicycle on the upper right. You don't want to have it be multicolor with a slash through the middle. Really, you don't want that. You want it just to be one color. That's all.
I will say with these colors, these are the city color palette colors. Okay.
It's just the logo. I do
Oh.
design work for a living. You don't want the logo to be, it's hard to read. And I had to actually squint in and try to figure out if it was I thought it was fake. I thought it was like you put a slash through something. It looks like there's what I'm trying to say is the GT on the left, that's very readable because it's just one color. And the Greenway Trails sign on the right, on the bottom, although it's the official logo, people aren't going to be able, they're going to think someone put a sticker at the bottom of your signs, and they're not going to know why it's there. It just doesn't look professional, that's all.
Point taken. That's all I can say at this point.
No, I know, I get it.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had the same initial impression. It's probably a good logo for reports and stuff, but maybe not for a sign.
It also, I think it doesn't look like the same thing as the simple logo. So
Okay.
there's nothing telling me that that those two things are related.
Okay.
The simpler one, I think, is just a lot better.
I got your comments. I'm gonna keep going. Do not like. Thank you. So the colors of the top and bottom plaques, like I said, are, and these, so we're still dealing with choices here. There's not really been one choice selected, but they come from the city color palette. So we're looking at blue and brown. And then the same type of information with the destination, distance, time, and then for the off-street, we're able to add walking time. So that's a nice feature, and it would be different for pedestrian wayfinding signage, I think, in like a downtown area. That's kind of a different discussion, but go ahead.
Are you asking us to tell you which color we like?
You're welcome to tell me which color you like. Yeah, I mean, this is what has been drafted so far. So yeah, if you have comments, that's what we're here for at this point.
I like the blue and then the burgundy. I'm not wild about the brown.
Okay.
Second.
The brown is reminds me of like when you're camping, which is kind of why I liked it. But now that
Yeah.
now that Cynthia's mentioned that, I totally guess I get it. Like the blue and the burgundy are, I agree, quite nice, and I really like the rounded top. The ones on the bottom, the rounded top looks really nice. The square just reads like a stop sign or a yield sign or something that belongs on a road. And this should be at a height that people who are moving can see, not at car height. And I actually really like the upper left one, would be my second.
This one?
Upper left green one.
Oh. This
If
one?
I'm choosing between wayfinding. Now, once I understood that GT was the name of the green trail, I would start looking for it on other things and following it. I actually thought it was a logo for the Washington Bikeway. But I really actually like naming things Washington Bikeway so people can talk about their routes more intelligently instead of saying I go left here and right. It's like, no, I use the Washington Bikeway and then I take a left on the Wabash Bikeway or whatever. But so my favorite is the upper left, and I yeah, and I might go for the burgundy. Maybe the burgundy is more visible than the blue outdoors, but I would have to see them. I don't know.
Craig?
You know, with regards to the GT, maybe it would be a good idea to have, like, say, periodic signs that are just only, say, GT and somehow referencing greenways and trails, like a reinforcement that isn't part of the wayfinding sign itself, but, like, say, periodically on that trail. Because GT for myself, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, right.
But if we somehow tie that into the other.
Do you have
and-
The way,
Do you have another slide that has confirmation signs on it?
Yes.
Okay, is that?
I mean, it's essentially this, it's a similar
I was just going to say,
layout.
the workaround would be what the city of Urbana, so you have your,
Oh, and adjacent to it says.
yeah, it
greenways
says,
and trails.
you're right, so you would have your GT, and then you would have it say greenways and trails, the same way the city of Urbana just has that knockout white, the knockout white leaf and says city of Urbana, so then it would also be GT, knockout white community. I get it.
Okay. I'm going to go back up and then down just to show you that we have a few signs that have different logos for different jurisdictions and facilities. This is Kickapoo Rail Trail specific, so what it's showing is the Forest Preserve who owns it, and then at the bottom, the KRT logo. I'm just gonna,
So what do we think of the KRT logo versus, say, KRT? And then, I mean, we have the same issue here that we had before?
A little bit. It's a little bit more recognizable because we've seen it more, probably.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No.
It's those three.
For that reason, I think we have to work with them on that issue, because, I mean, I would assume, for example, along the trail, they would be paying for the sign, so I'd like to not just dictate to them, this is what we're gonna do and you have to do it,
Yeah,
because they don't have to, I mean.
exactly. That's the thing with these other designs is, I mean, the other logos is, obviously, the city can control what it can, but not the other agencies.
And the Forest Preserve has a very, very tight budget, but I personally would be happy to redesign that KRT logo in a mono. No, I mean, really, it's like, this is just what I do. It's really, I'm totally, if you want to let them know,
I will-
Annie Adams has volunteered to redesign that logo on one color, or they might have a single, they probably have a single color one, but
They may
if they
have,
don't.
'cause for
Yeah.
T-shirts and stuff.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking there were some T-shirts.
Yeah, they probably do. But yeah, that would be, I just would really recommend on signs, you just want one color. It's why stop signs look the way they look. It's why, yeah. It's just, it increases readability.
So. Can we talk a little bit more about the on-street? Annie, you made a comment about the Kickapoo, or the upper left one. So you think with the bike, and then it has some type of naming with that versus the other two, which are,
I'm assuming there are places where we won't have a name and we would maybe just say bike route.
It's possible. Another,
But I do agree with Annie, the upper left, I think, is simpler. And I don't like the upper left, I don't like upper right, because I don't think it gives enough information. And then the lower left, I think, is less clear. It's not as simple. So I think that the upper left is just conveys the most information in the simplest format.
we did talk about, I think a huge component of this that we haven't yet tackled is the naming. And I think that's a key component of what you all are going to be a part of. But I think that to me, my input to RPC was I felt that would be the differentiator, and I think though we're talking potentially not just maybe a street name bikeway, it might be a unique feature bikeway that is unique to Urbana. It could be, and those are things that are going to take a lot more brainstorming, but it could be important people in past, that have been key bike advocates. That could be their trail. It could be named to features of Urbana, But I think looking at their research and what I've done, that's kind of separates out, and I think people from out of town will understand better if they know that, some named bikeway is the bikeway that you can use. And that's that would tie in also with the KRT, and then we have the green loop and
I completely agree. My only caution is I don't want to just delay implementation. I don't want us to get so bogged down with the discussion and debate about the names that we delay getting this out there, because getting it out there is really important.
Right. I will tell you at this point, we have funding for implementation, but here we are sitting mid-summer, and the reality of it is any implementation we do will be a year from now. So I think we've got some time to kind of get this right a little bit, and it really depends upon RPC and where they're sitting with some of these components. But I think we could do that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, there's room, we need to have steering committee discussion and a public input component of this, so, yeah.
So is there a map yet that shows which ones will be signed?
No, but that's a next step of what we're working on, essentially.
I was gonna say, I'm of two minds on the naming it, like the Shel Silverstein Bikeway, or the, Roger Ebert Bikeway. On one hand, I think it's a great tourist. Like, you're going to bike down Washington Avenue and you're going to stop and see Roger Ebert's house. That's a really big deal. On the other hand, I know there's a lot of honorary street names that people put up, and no one cares, and no one looks at them, and, like
I think
here.
it should be destination based. And
So
have
anyway,
something to do. It could be, historic district or something like that. But,
so yeah.
but Roger Ebert, that kind of goes both roles. But there is a destination there.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of famous people that have lived here and done amazing things. So yeah, I'm of two minds of it. So that's my.
Just one thing, Gabe, the signs for Weaver Park, should we also say Weaver Park / Kickapoo Rail Trail or KRT or something like that?
So with the distance, we would probably count them as two separate locations. I would, like on the Main Street corridor, you would probably have both of those destinations listed. All right, I'm gonna go on. So this is catered to the University of Illinois using their color scheme, if they so choose to.
The nice thing about the round tops too is from a distance you can see the silhouette and you can start to realize that there's going to be some instructions coming up and you should pay attention.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with Annie, but also too, I think I would imagine that Architectural Review Committee would have a problem with the Greenway and Trails block at the bottom there too as well. Just exactly what Annie was saying. I can just feel it. Architectural Review Committee is going to have a problem.
Good to
It's
know.
not what they do.
All right, Park District. I know that they've seen this, so don't think we have to spend a lot of time.
And our park rule signs are blue and green, so I can anticipate that being the way we go.
What color did you say?
Our park rule signs are blue and green.
So maybe we should go with burgundy, or should we go with
No,
the
I
blue?
think we should keep it consistent. It's flipped, so the top is green,
Mhm.
and then all of the rules are in blue.
I can come back to any of these, but I just wanted to, we're almost through it, it's 8 pages, but the confirmation signs, which essentially is the same information with a straight ahead arrow or no arrow, basically.
Oh, so it's telling you you're on the right path.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Very important level.
Yeah.
Very important.
And then the turn signs is the last one that can show you at the intersection where you need to turn. And these have a couple, I guess, 3 choices in the off-street with this 2 rounded tops, but one has City of Urbana with a bicyclist and pedestrian symbol and the other does not.
Yeah, is there any thoughts on those? Preferences?
Any preference? What was it? Oh, on the
Between
The top.
middle
first,
and
second, or
bottom.
third row.
Mhm.
I think since we like the rounded top and how that differentiates from a regular street sign, that will also tell people that it's for bikes and peds, so you don't need those extra logos cluttering
So
it.
busy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these are off street, right? So
Yeah.
people are ostensibly going to be on foot or on bike, or
And-
what have you.
Right.
And you can't fit it where it says Leal School in that.
I don't think that
Okay.
would be what the standards would want us to do.
I'm getting a little concerned about the number of signs.
Well, there's
I
a
mean,
lot of,
there
there'll
have,
be a lot of
I've
signs.
almost run into them on my bike before, and
Yeah.
and they block visibility and stuff, so I think we'd have to be really careful not to overdo it.
There are standards for how to place them for that not to happen. I think when I did the presentation, we talked about how far they have to be, how high they have to be. They cannot be where you should run into them. That the one you nearly ran into was not properly.
They were both on campus, so maybe they have different rules.
What's the rule? You don't have to follow them. That's the rule. Yeah, exactly. Well, you get sued.
But again, I really like the ones in the upper left. Those are really nice on everything you've done so far.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, additional questions or comments? Cynthia?
Well, I just wanted to say, I know that we're going to follow the standards, so these will be readable. I was in a neighboring community this last weekend on their trail, and they had wayfinding signs that, as a bicyclist, you simply could not read. The type was not big enough. It was not big enough. Only a pedestrian would find it useful. If you wanted to really read it, you would need to stop and look at it. So, and you really don't want people just suddenly stopping on the path. So I think we'll be meeting standards, so we won't have that problem. And I want to say how excited I am that we're going to have this opportunity to provide people with that information.
Thanks.
I have a question. Would it look odd if you want to go back to some of the other signs? Would it look odd to have a rounded bottom on these?
We did actually have that as one of the options, and it ended up, was it?
It was cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
We got our operations people involved, and they were able to give some information to Regional Plan Commission, who also talked to a sign manufacturer, and I mean, it was very expensive.
Just curious what the reasoning is there, because I don't know, one side's rounded.
It's because they have to, well, they're manufacturing these blanks, and it had something to do with the process of it. I'm not a sign guy, but it was, yeah. I mean, but it was almost double, wasn't it? The
I think
cost
so.
of the square, I think.
Yeah, it was significantly more
Yeah.
expensive.
I formally withdraw my comment.
I'll tell you what, we can, if community development wants to pony up some funds, we can.
Voluntary pay reduction or
Right,
something? Yeah.
right. We'll have a Kevin Garcia fund for rounded bottom signs. Yeah. You know what we could do? We could put duct tape around the bottom of this. From a distance, it'll look like it's. No, that was one, we actually
Yeah.
talked about that at the
Yeah.
beginning, and it just became cost prohibitive.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really need to vote on anything. I don't want it to sound like we were all in agreement that the blue was better, because I'm kind of partial to the burgundy, but
Okay.
just.
Me too.
I know silence is agreement, so I just wanted to not be silent on that one.
That's fine. I think we would probably want to have some public, and that's why we want to have a few choices, but, so.
Okay, thanks.
Wait, I have one, back to the, whether it's the Roger Ebert Greenway or whether it's Roger Ebert's house is in 0.5 miles, might be the better solution.
I think that's fair.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and move on to new business, which is another presentation by the Champaign County Regional
The
Planning
last
Commission
one.
on bicycle-friendly community reapplication.
Yes. This one is a little shorter, but there's a couple things to think about at the end here. So, as you may be familiar, this is part of the Bicycle Friendly America program that's run by the League of American Bicyclists, LAB, And communities must reapply every 4 years to retain their bicycle-friendly or BFC, bicycle-friendly community BFC status. Oop. So going back 10 years, we had the approval of the first bike master plan, and a recommendation was to apply for this status. And in 2010, we were awarded the bronze level bike-friendly community, which was the first in downstate Illinois. So that was exciting. And then the 4-year renewal in 2014, we actually jumped over silver and are now the gold level, a gold level bike-friendly community, the first in Illinois. So also exciting. Yes, first and only.
Chicago. In Chicago? Chicago's gold
I
now.
think there's, did they? Okay. The last I knew they were silver.
They were not previous. Which I enjoyed bragging about.
Yes. And now we have our Bike Master Plan update in 2016, and now in 2018, time to renew. And so city staff has hired us to look at the application and complete that, and we've been working on it. We have reached out to city planning, MTD, CU Safe Routes about some of the questions. When printed in Word, it's a 49-page application, so a lot to kind of sift through. And now we're here talking about it. We're going to meet with Public Works and then have a stakeholder group meeting, which we have kind of met with some of the people, but we just want to make sure we don't miss anybody. And then the application is in a little less than a month, Thursday, August 9th, and then November will be the announcement of the award. And it's submitted online. There's a Word version that we're using as a working document that's what it's there for. Some comments from LAB is that it's not necessary to be able to check every box on the application. They say, don't be shy to tell us about your community's weaknesses. And then at the end of each E, which is how it's organized, there are bonus point questions. So if there's something that doesn't fit one of their questions, that's the space that we have to add information. So the application includes an intro, the community profile, and then sections on engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement and safety, and evaluation and planning. And then there's a final overview and an opportunity to include supplementary materials, including some pictures. So I just wanted to bring these two questions here for your consideration. One is, in the final overview, it asks to briefly describe the most positive outcome of your community's support for bicycling. So if there's anything you want to talk about, I can record that here.
The most positive outcome, potential positive outcome, or one that's already, that we think, that we see happen?
I would say one that has happened, because there are some questions about what have you done. There's a question about what have you done in the last 12 months, what's going to happen soon. We're really looking at the last 4 years of 2014 to 18 since we've applied last. Oops.
Well, I can say I think that people move here because of the reputation of being bike friendly. Like a fair amount of people.
I think it's increased bicycling rates.
I think it's improved people's non-cyclist attitude towards cyclists. I've noticed a little bit of
Oh,
an
yeah.
improvement.
Absolutely. And it's improved safety. We have had a reduction in
fatalities.
yeah. So I think that's a claim to fame that we absolutely should make.
I would say we get comments from people from other cities about Urbana, at least their reputation as being bicycle friendly, and I will get emails and inquiries about our system from really all over the country. So,
I'd say the community's health and well-being, and that's environmental as well as mental and physical.
I'm not sure the Kickapoo Rail Trail would be happening if there wasn't so many people who are spearheading it, cyclists. In a regional trail system, not just advocating for multi-use paths.
I think it empowers cyclists when you feel non-cyclists are not obeying the law. You're like, this is who we are as a community. We're a gold level cycling community. And Gabe is absolutely correct. We are the only Illinois gold level cycling community. The city of Chicago is actually silver.
That's what I thought.
Yep. University of Illinois is bronze. Neutral Cycles gold, RPC silver, CUMTD silver, Park District silver.
I would have noticed.
Point of pride. I don't know why. It's probably because it was so
Especially
bad when I
Friday
lived
morning
there.
parade.
Oh, yeah. Just think it was like they were named like the #1 cycling city.
Yeah, I think that might be poor form to write that for this question, though, that we beat Chicago.
Yeah, probably not.
I don't want to interrupt your thought process, but I'll present the other question that I think could use some weigh-in. What could be done differently in order to make bicycling safer, more enjoyable, and/or more convenient in your community?
Lowering speed limits to 25 miles per hour, having a Vision Zero plan, increasing more, creating more on-street bikeways for cyclists, and more crosswalks for pedestrians, and slowing down vehicular traffic with design elements.
Completing our bicycle network. Another one for me would be to have a incentive program for businesses to provide 2 standard bike parking and to provide more covered bike parking. I also think working with organizations and business in the community to get them to put in encouragement programs and to become bicycle-friendly businesses. I sent out an email, gosh, it's probably been 2 years ago now, to a number of different entities, telling them I'd help them with the application. The Park District, well, more than one responded. The Park District carried through, and as you know, they are now a bicycle-friendly business. And so I think encouraging that program would give people more opportunity. Organizations like Carl providing showers and covered bike parking to their employees. I know for a fact there are people who would ride their bikes if they had that. That I have had doctors tell me that they would ride their bike if there was a shower at work. So that's the kind of thing that if a business organization goes through that process, then I think we would see a change in culture.
So there could be a building code requirement that requires,
Well, I can go there. Absolutely. There are places that have that.
There are many new yes. It's not a made-up thing.
Maybe we could start with providing incentives for it, I don't know.
Start with the city building.
There you go.
Yeah.
I know one of the tours I took at the National Bike Conference was at National Geographic, and they had a lot of those things, but they also had just a simple program where if you were riding to work, you could put on a map where you were at home and where your work was, so other people that lived in that area who either want somebody to ride with or just weren't sure of a safe route to get to work could at least talk to you or find out who put that pin there and talk to that person about finding a safe route to work. And so I don't know if we don't have that many major employers that would have a lot of people like that, but maybe like bicycle groups could hand out maps and say, you know, if you don't ride to work, you know, because you don't think you have a safe route, show us your beginning and ending point, we'll try to find a safe route for you, something like that. So that's probably too long to put in the plan, but I just thought I'd throw that in there.
But, you know, Bill,
I think it's still about bicycle-friendly businesses, basically.
I mean, it's a little, I don't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say, it's sort of like Bike Ambassador, but using what
Right.
we have.
Yep.
I mean, maybe that and or a hybrid of people who have knowledge, but I know everyone's willing to talk with people to plan routes, but I don't know if there's formalizing.
Yeah, and I was going to lead into it like a bike wellness program. So like the University of Minnesota works with a company called DarrowZap, and it's an RFID. And so basically it's a system, you bike by something and it goes beep. And basically it's for people who are walking and biking. And they found that when they implemented it, they were hoping to lower basically their insurance rates, and they were absolutely able to lower their insurance rates by doing this. So it is something definitely the university. Health insurance rates, yep. But just some sort of bike wellness program, which brings me to the bike park concept. So when I lived in Chicago, I parked at a bike park, and sharing routes and sharing tips and having incentive where you're meeting with other cyclists and you're locking your bike up with them. It is really empowering, and it's really nice because you have this little chatty time in the morning where you talk to people and you meet people. Like, so for example, if the University of Illinois were able to do something with this with like campus recreation, you end up meeting a lot of different people that you wouldn't normally meet in your everyday life, and it creates really robust connections throughout the community. But the route sharing is really a big deal. It's really a big part of that. So if you have like, you call it bike parking, but basically where all the cyclists come together and they can take showers and they have lockers. But at the end of the day, if we just wanted to designate a spot at the City of Urbana building or in another place where people could share their routes, there's absolutely no reason why we can't do that.
Yeah, I hear the Civic Center's empty.
Just to comment a little bit, the University of Illinois, DarrowZap is really expensive, but students set aside $25,000, and there's a group of students on campus right now trying to build a program like DarrowZap. It's an RFID bicycle registration system that would be able to incentivize and hopefully one day send to health insurance providers too as well. Second thing is we do actually, at least at the University of Illinois, it's a organization that does have certain buildings that do have showers and lockers for people who run and bike to work, which is cool. Well, we also have Campus Rec that has discounted rates on showers and lockers just for commuters. Of course, we do more.
Or is the university a bicycle-friendly university?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What level?
It's bronze, but we're reapplying this year too as well with Urbana on August 9th.
Okay. Best of luck.
One last thing is I would like to see more support for ongoing adult bicycle education programming. We have really struggled to provide that, and there is a demand for it.
I think there's a demand for a variety of education too, like even Cycling Savvy. There's a role for that if somebody wants to take it on.
Really fast, and I'm just announcing this because I think it's really exciting, but Campus Rec has taken a huge step up in that. And this year, I don't have the exact dates yet, but I've heard that they're planning bike winter classes. They're planning bike commuter tip classes and maintenance. It's the Wellness Center, and Jake Benjamin will be teaching them, the manager of the Campus Bike Center. Which we've never had before.
As far as filling in some of the other E's, like education and encouragement, are you up to, have you been in contact with like PCC and the clubs to see if they've been doing more? Or?
CCB gave me a list of events, things, initiatives that they've been part of.
Okay.
I haven't talked with PCC
Yeah,
yet.
CCB is probably the main one, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
They did a first aid class, I know that, I think that's all. And we did a joint class for group riding skills. Those are the only two we've done with PCC.
But well, and PCC also did the bike light giveaway too last year.
I think they were probably doing that before. That's probably still in there. But yeah, CCB has the new trailer and stuff, right, with the demo bikes and loaner bikes and all that. So.
Well, this was a bike light giveaway in the community, so this was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was a little different.
Yeah, they did it completely separate
It's
in
on
the
your
spring.
list.
I'm pretty sure.
I think it is. Yeah. I
No,
remember
it was in the spring. It was a separate event. It was in the spring, separate event, and the PCC raised a lot of money for buying the bike lights, and the bike project in PCC
That's
handed
right.
out bike lights. So that's also really cool.
Where was it?
I forgot.
Was it in Urbana? Do you know?
It was right on the border.
All right, we'll count it.
I biked by it.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say more, as a cyclist, I do spend a lot of time, if people are curious about cycling, like saying like, oh, well, here's, people like talking to me about my bike. Like, I'm like, well, I have this light, and then you'd want to get this light, and you'd want to like, just like things you kind of sometimes feel you're repeating over and over again, but I definitely, or like just put your arm out. That's how you tell people you're turning left or right. And I do know with the MCOR project, I can see a lot more people biking, and whether it's not because we're all funneling on to now where the MCOR project is, but it is going to definitely increase the number of people biking and wanting to bike and bike curious. So I definitely think education, people are definitely going to be wanting education, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to deliver that in a way. I think there might be videos or something happening with the University of Illinois. I think there's a website happening as well.
Lots of route information and lots of bicycle information. Simple website, kind of like a student life style of website, where the information will be pretty clear, or we're hoping will be very clear, and it'll have information on how to find bicycle resources like the Campus Bike Center, but also route information for the Champaign-Urbana community, working on route information, how to find bicycle information. We did a lot of interviews last year of students, staff, and faculty of all different backgrounds to provide information that people frequently can't find. The rules on campus about bicycling, bike parking locations.
That reminds me, another thing we could do in the area of enforcement is participate with the university in a bike decoy program. That really gave us a lot of information on what's going on with bike theft in the community. We've got several hot spots in Urbana, and I think that it was not a very expensive effort, and bike theft is a major problem in the community now. Someone tried to steal my bike outside of the drugstore one day, and I was in there 15 minutes, so it's a problem.
And then, are there any questions on equity on the application yet? Are they doing anything with that?
Not like as its own section. There are some questions, I think, within a couple, but
Was it Champaign County Bikes did the Earn a Bike program,
I think you had that on the list, too.
or is that everybody? So,
MTV and Champaign County Bike, we're doing it again this summer.
riding a bike. And then bike project, that's probably about the same as last time.
Yeah.
In fact, it's happening this week.
I keep wanting there to be an adult bike rodeo on the quad. And you'd have to like ride around the quad and go to all the different stations, and you could have people tell you like, this is what a front light looks like and a back light, and this is how you turn left. Yeah, so that's just one idea. I've just been out because I've been trying to figure out how do you get people to show up for a bike rodeo and stop asking me these really basic questions. And I think if you call it an adult bike rodeo, I suspect people would show up. And so this has just been an idea I've been trying to figure out how we could do it.
Do we get any extra points for all the collaborative partners we have, like MTD
Doesn't hurt.
and EVI and all that? I mean, this,
Point, actually, bicycle-friendly
Right.
businesses give us points. LCIs give us points. Bicycle-friendly university gives us points.
okay.
So there are real reasons for us to have that as part of our effort.
Yep, definitely.
And I know the co-op lost theirs because they had so much changeover, and the person who's responsible, they didn't get their application in last time. So that sort of tracking function of helping, the city can help, or, however we put together the coordinator position can help track. They could be a point of contact for the national, staff person who runs the program.
Yeah, having a full-time bike pedestrian coordinator for the city of Urbana would be great.
Okay, anything else on BFC? Anything else for Gabe? All right. Gabe, Rita, Laurie, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
I have an item for new business.
Okay.
I wanted to, I worked with, staff at MTD, and then we ran, a informational flyer on the two-stage left turn boxes, through several committees. And, we have a flyer that we've been pushing out, and I wanted to check and see if the city is, posting that, and perhaps maybe even providing it on UPTV. Since those are in, there are a lot of questions, a lot of confusion, et cetera. And I know we're going to be looking at doing video. The city's going to work on a video. We had to wait until they were in, though, to make our own video. And we provided links in the flyer to videos of other cities, but then we get the usual feedback. Well, this isn't like ours. Well, of course not. These are different locations. But I wanted to provide people with as much information as possible. And I'd also like to ask staff to help us have some dialogue with law enforcement, because I checked with Ride Illinois. I talked with Ed Barsati. I've looked through the codes. There is nothing that says bicyclists have to dismount and walk in crosswalks. They have to yield to pedestrians.
Yeah.
And so they should be able to cross during the pedestrian scramble phase of these signals at both of these intersections. That will help clear the intersection out for turning movements, particularly for large vehicles like buses. Having fewer people crossing is better. And the cyclists do need to be yielding to the pedestrians. And there may be times, of course, when there are so many pedestrians in the intersection that you really cannot ride through, that you do have to get off and walk. But I think that is a point that we need to have discussed across law enforcement, both at both cities and at the university, so that people can use that phase as well. And of course, people can, there's nothing has changed in any of the laws or ordinances. Bicycles are still vehicles in the state, so you can still operate as a vehicle on the roadway, use the lane, and turn left in the traffic lane. That is still an option, although I don't think very many cyclists are going to choose that option given the configuration and the heavy bus traffic, particularly in the Green and Wright intersection.
Just to add to that, I think, Cynthia, that at least from the work that I've been doing the past couple of years, when I get that question about ped scrambles, I think a lot of people don't understand that you can bike on sidewalks in the area, and so they see that as like, well, is this a sidewalk? I can't bike on sidewalks.
Well, part of the confusion is because you cannot bike on the sidewalk on Green once you cross.
Yep.
Right. And so I think that's where some of the confusion has come from for law enforcement. But they're going to be approaching it from the east on an off-road facility. And so they're
Well,
going
we've
to.
got them in other places too.
Right.
yeah.
And so when you get to the intersection, you know, you've just merged off, but you've been off-road. And so I think that's where some of the confusion, I think you're right, that's where some of the confusion is, because they cannot ride on the sidewalks. Although the majority of time, I have to say, when I see cyclists on Green, they are riding on the sidewalk, unfortunately. That's where I see them all the time.
Is that new with MCOR, or
What?
that you can't ride on sidewalks on Green Street?
Once you're east of Wright, you are not supposed to be on the sidewalk on your bike, because they have zero, the buildings are up to
Be
the-
west,
west
be
of
west
Wright.
of.
I'm sorry, yes, I'm sorry,
Okay.
west.
More
I
like a
said that
downtown,
wrong.
okay.
Also in Champaign, they don't allow any biking in the central business district on the sidewalk in Green
Right.
Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, sorry, I was
Okay,
saying
that's
it
similar to
wrong. When you're
Urbana
coming from the
downtown, yeah.
east going to the west, and when you get west of Wright, you can no longer ride on the sidewalk. However, that's where I see the majority of the cyclists when I'm over there. And I'm curious about why, because really the traffic is so slow on
Yeah.
Green that I will bike on it unless it's really congested, and then I'll move over one direction or the other, north or south, and use it North or South Street.
Yep, it's slow.
The one thing I always tell myself in these situations is, like during a pedestrian scramble and I'm on my bike, I tell myself this is a pedestrian priority space, and I am being allowed to use it. And I really, that's like, as a younger cyclist, I was, you know, it was a challenge to bike through spaces like this, and it was like, you know, this sort of like adrenaline challenge. And the way I have like changed it in my head is I am being allowed to share this space with pedestrians, and pedestrians are the weaker person in this. And when I bike now, I appreciate when vehicles understand that they need to share the road with me as a cyclist, and as cyclists need to really be on the lookout for pedestrians. So it's, you know, it's basically just creating an ecosystem like that. I would like to say I have been using the Green Street a lot, and I'm crazy excited about it. I've been having issues at Goodwin, and there are turn boxes there now, and all I've decided to do is bike all the way up to them and just sit in the turn box to go straight. Because if I try to stay in the bike lane, or if I try to stay, like it just gets too confusing. So for the vehicles, so I have just decided to bike up. It's just very confusing though, because the buses move a little faster than me. And so, for example, yesterday I just stopped at the end of the bike lane and waited for the bus to make a right-hand turn. There was a car next to me, and the car just blew through the red light because it was so frustrated that it took the bus so long to take a right-hand turn, and the bus was probably trying to figure out what I was doing. So I really think that's going to be a really big conflict point, and I'm really, really concerned for cyclists who aren't like me, and I know what it's like to drive a large vehicle like that because I can't see out of my mirrors at all. And so I just think it is going to be a problem, and I think we're really going to have to be aware of it. But the workaround I have come up with is I bike all the way up to the front, I just sit in that green bike box, and then everyone can see me. And then when the pedestrian scramble comes, I proceed. So that's been my workaround.
That is no right turn on red there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
When it's green, you don't know what to do as a cyclist. When it's green and everyone's moving
Yeah.
forward, if I want to keep going straight, where do I wait?
I go behind the bus.
Right, but you're on the green part of the bike path, and that bus it's a little, and so you're on the green part of the bike path, and then I had
No, but I mean, if you stay in the bike lane, you either have to be visible. I get out of the bike lane and position myself behind the bus, actually toward the left side, so the driver can see me in his mirror.
Right.
But that's probably not what most people would do in a bike lane.
Most cyclists are going to go forward, and I can easily go faster than that bus, but I don't go faster than that bus because I know that bus can't see me, but younger cyclists are going to go right by that bus, and it's
Well,
very
if the
concerning.
light's green, they are legally allowed to do that. And the bus operators, of course, immediately started asking about the new infrastructure. So there is going to be additional information provided to them through our training program. Every summer they do refreshers. They also send information out to the bus operators. So the bus operators will approach that intersection with the knowledge that the cyclists can continue going straight through the intersection, and they will not be executing those turns as long as someone is coming.
And they should try, do they try to merge into the bike lane before they get to the corner?
That's how operators are trained if there is room. The problem, for example, when you're going eastbound on Green, when you get to Wright, is the merge area is small enough. The only buses that would be able to do that would be the articulated buses. It's too short to get a larger bus over. So they are not going to be able to do it there, which is one of my concerns about how tight that merge area is. And so I think that's another reason for getting the intersection cleared during the pedestrian scramble, so we have fewer cyclists doing that. But I am concerned. At Goodwin, I haven't had trouble, but at Green and Wright, I am concerned about cyclists coming off of the side path because that merge area is short and the visibility is going to be difficult. So the original plans had a bike signal at that intersection, which would have helped us stop the cyclists so that when buses were turning, example for turning right, the problem is signal timing at that intersection is very complicated. But what they do other places is they had stopped the cyclists with the bike light, and then the right turns occur only when they have a signal, a turn signal to turn right. So you don't have any right turning traffic except during that phase, and that eliminates that conflict. And so that's how other communities have found that they have to solve that issue. Our intersection is more complicated because of the pedestrian scramble, and there aren't so many of those. There are some in Chicago. I mean, we could take a look at how they've done it there, but we'll see. I'm sure we're going to have to make some adjustments as we go along, and
I have seen some skilled bus drivers actually, even though they have to go left to turn right because of the radius, they'll go right first to get their tail in the bike lane, and then stop at the light with their tail in the bike lane, and that helps a lot too.
Yes. Yeah, that is, the training for them does include getting over so that cyclists can't pass you on the right, where they have the ability to do that, especially on campus. They do that because, as you all know, that visibility is difficult on the right side.
I do have, you asked me to check about speed limits in St. Joe. So I talked to the mayor of St. Joe for a while, and she said, actually, for a little background, the way it came about was they wanted to allow golf carts in St. Joe to go on the residential streets, and in order to do that, they actually designated specific crossings on 150 and Main Street where golf carts are supposed to cross because they don't want them just popping out in front of traffic anywhere. So they went through that process, and then they kind of decided at that point that it would be a good time to bring up the speed limits. So that's how they kind of politically managed it. And Craig might know more as far as how it's been accepted, but she said that except for a couple of streets that it seems to have been accepted pretty well. It was a unanimous vote because the one guy that was going to vote against it wasn't there on the council. Their signage issue is a little bit easier than ours because we would probably not do it on collector streets. It would probably be mostly residential streets. So then that brings up, I think, additional signage problems because then when you get off a collector street, you have to remind people that it's 25 again or something. It's a little more complicated. There, everything's 25 except for 150 that goes through town. Even Main Street is 25. That used to be a state-owned street, but St. Joe's responsible for it now. Then we talked about the KRT quite a bit and some zoning issues and things. She kind of wishes she was home rule sometimes, but they aren't. Can't remember much else about, did you have any specific questions about implementation of speed limits in St. Joe? I might remember some other things we talked about. Anybody?
Yeah, I was just curious how it happened and how people were reacting to it.
Yeah, and then the enforcement, they don't have police in St. Joe. They contract with the county. So it's probably not enforced real heavily, but if they need to enforce it, they can. And she feels like, at least with the 25-mile-per-hour limit, if somebody, is going 40, 45, it's going to be a serious ticket, rather than, when it was 30, a 40-mile-per-hour ticket isn't as serious when your speed limit's 30. So should be an incentive to at least reduce the high-speed speeding.
We call residential streets for a reason, I mean, they're for people to walk on and bike on and slowly drive their vehicles on. They're not for high speed down. I mean, we have so many cutaways, like right over in this neighborhood. It's not good when I see people like up and by me. It's interesting.
Are there golf carts now driving?
Yeah, and they have to. They get a permit, and with their permit, they get a map of where they can cross the main streets.
The golf cart thing is like actually a nationwide. It's actually a nationwide thing. People really like them because they're outside and they can feel the wind on their face, and they feel it builds community, and you're not encased in a steel vehicle. Cyclists, I think, can begin to understand the direction I am taking this. So it's a lot like riding a bike, except you have two people. And the other kind of cool thing about taking one of these golf carts is you have two people. So it's again like how we've been advocating for cycling. We want to make sure that when we advocate for increased cycling, two cyclists can actually bike next to each other. That's again one of the reasons why people like driving, and it's one of the reasons why people like taking these golf carts, because two people can have a conversation while talking to each other. So it's fascinating to me, the golf cart thing, because it is a lot like biking, except you're not biking.
You don't get exercise.
You don't get to eat as much when you're done. Okay, is there any other business? Any other announcements? Craig?
So there's some discussion about MCOR Monday. The project number 1 was open fully to two-way traffic. So there's still work to be done. Landscaping, restoration, still a little bit of striping that has to be completed. I do plan to do an assessment of, walking, biking, driving, the signage, the functionality of this stretch. I would urge all of you or anybody else listening to send me an email if they have concerns.
I've already done that.
Yeah, I've certainly
With
got
pictures.
got Cynthia's, but this thing was designed and I think fairly well thought out. But there are a few things that we need to tweak, and I think with the bike boxes there may be some additional approach signage that I've been looking into a little bit.
Okay.
The bike box is just a tool. It's an option to use. If we determine in the end that this isn't the right way to go about it, I mean, it's really just paint actually that we can take back up and not do it. I've seen some drastic comments about it, but it's just a tool, and you can still, as a bicyclist, merge over and go to the left lane. And I'm probably more concerned that I'm not sure that everybody's going to understand what to do, but it's just a tool, and a lot of these things are, even the sweeping of the bike lanes around the transit areas. That's new in Urbana as well.
Absolutely.
The green-backed bike symbols are new
Yes.
as well.
And they're great.
Right.
We like them.
Pedestrians are not walking on them anywhere near.
Mhm.
They're great.
So the contract still will be open for a while, so it'll be some time yet. But send me your comments. The next phase, so that was termed Project 1 of 5, and of course Champagne's working on 2 and 3 right now, and then they've got 4 moving along towards getting ready to go to bid, and then 5 comes back around to us, and we're entering the design phase for 5, which is
Yay.
from where 1 stopped there east of Lincoln, and then it'll go down to along Green over to Race.
That'll be great.
And that'll be scheduled for next year.
Yay.
Construction, we have a lot of hoops to go through. We are going to, plan is to put bike lanes along that section of Green, not widen the road. The plan would be to remove on-street parking. That'll probably be the next obstacle that'll be occurring here in the fall, that we'll be taking to City Council for approval. It'll first have to go through the Traffic Commission because they handle all parking regulations, and then we do plan to replace the sidewalks on both sides in entirety all the way through the project. There will be some tree removal particularly at the intersections where there's trees adjacent to the ramps, or no ramps at all, actually. Several places no ramps, and we will have some of that we got to work through.
Okay.
But that's the next and last stage for the whole MCOR project. So that's kind of where we're headed.
Okay, great. Thanks. Cynthia.
Lily and I can say that the Light the Night event has been set for September 20th. So mark your calendar. And we will be looking for volunteers and working on publicity and all of that.
Every single one of you.
I feel like we
Light the
just
night,
did
light-
that. I
light
feel like that was
giveaway.
just yesterday that we were doing that last year.
September 20th. Okay. Future topics? Anyone have?
I have one more announcement.
Oh, okay.
Last night, our city council passed the dockless bike share ordinance. Applications are now being accepted by the lead agency, which is Champaign. So we expect applications to start rolling in soon.
Very good. Okay. Future topics, anyone? Oh, Craig.
I think we owe Annie some discussions, and I know that we've had these other, issues that are more implementation issues, like the wayfinding. But are you ready to present on some of the topics that you had asked about? I think
About closing streets
Closing
for
streets
First Friday,
for First
impact
Friday.
of closing streets, open streets.
What we can do, I can dig out the list and send it to you, but you might have an opportunity the next 1 or 2 meetings to present. I think Audrey maybe had one as well.
And then you said we'd probably get an update on the crash statistics in September. September, that'll be the final report. We can't get an update until the final report's out.
And then Brad Bennett would like to present on the brick sidewalk project for this year at the next meeting. Talk about what the plans are for that.
Just like which ones are going to be repaired and things like
Mhm.
that? Okay.
Yep.
Anything else?
Yeah, a while ago, probably like 8 or 9 months ago, I proposed a topic that I'd be willing to give a presentation on, and that is the language that we use when talking about transportation. So I feel like some of the language we use is almost, it creates some animosity or something, talking about cyclists and motorists and all that. So I've read some good articles about it. I'd be willing to throw something together in the next couple of months to, just to broach that topic. I I've been in the writing that I do about these topics. I've been trying to use language. You know, it's sort of people first language.
People
saying
who ride bikes
yeah,
instead of
people on
cyclists.
bikes, people in, you know, people driving cars, things like that. I've noticed at a couple of presentations at different bike summits that I've been at, some of the top presenters have also, you know, they didn't necessarily come right out and say, I'm talking in this particular way, but they use that type of language, and I think it has a really positive effect.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, there's always an opportunity when you get the notice for the meeting to chime in with additional things for the agenda. All right, thanks a lot. Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.